We're going to pick right back up in Matthew 5 if you weren't here last week. We're just going to kind of go over a few of the verses that we looked at last week, and then we're going to jump into the next verse of our series. It says in Matthew 5:1, and seeing the multitudes, he went up on a mountain, and when he was seated, his disciples came to him. Then he opened his mouth and taught them, saying. And remember that Jesus was teaching people who were literally following after him. He did miracle upon miracle. He fed multiple thousands of people, and they were following after him. And many times when we think of the followers of Jesus, we're thinking of the 12 disciples, but there were hundreds upon hundreds of people following him. And many times Jesus would remove himself from the crowds to be with the 12, sometimes with the 3. The word that we're going to read over and over again in this passage, blessed, it's often been misrepresented, misinterpreted. But the word blessed, makaros, refers to the highest type of well-being possible. It's a term that the Greeks used when a feeling of contentment, when everything was coming together, when one knows their place in life. We say it in phrases that I'm in my happy place. Everything is coming together. Everything is working out just right. The Bible says in verse number 3, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus wasn't talking about being poor financially. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. He wasn't talking about people who were simply in captivity and mourning because of captivity, but rather mourning over sin. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Verse 6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. In verse 11, blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely for my sake. We get to our text verse from last week. You are the salt of the earth. To which you might say, Anthony, I heard last week's message and I want to be savory salt. Anthony, I want to be what you described last week, but Anthony, I have some heartache. I have some difficulties in my life. I have some trials I'm going through. And Anthony, as soon as I get those things sorted out, as soon as I get some healing first, and my life is whole again, Anthony, I have every intention to be savory salt. So there are two problems with this kind of thinking. The first one is this: you in and of yourself cannot live this teaching. It's only by the grace of God and the work of the Holy Spirit in your life and in my life. The second problem with this is salt is sometimes most useful in its crushed form. It's sometimes our darkest moments, our greatest heartaches, our lowest points, when God wants to use us in an unbelievable way, where His grace is manifested in our life and that we are flavorful salt for all of the world to experience. We read through this passage so quickly that we miss this next verse. You are the light of the world. To which you might say, Anthony, listen, that's great. I don't want to be light. I don't want to be salt. I don't want to be light. Anthony, I just want to be a good Christian. I want to go to heaven when I die. I want good things to happen for me, and I want to experience God's goodness in my life. But this whole salt thing and being the light thing, it sounds way too complicated, and it sounds like it's way outside of my reach. I don't want to be light. I want to go to church and I want to raise my family. There might be some others who say, Anthony, you know what? I want to be light, but I just feel like I can't. I feel so inadequate and I don't feel like I can be this light, that I can be this salt that is described. And if that's you, either individual, if that's you, the rest of this verse is exactly what you need right now. Would you look at it with me? Verse number 14. You are the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. The word set, it's a Greek word that means appointed and placed. You, me, we're appointed and placed right where we're supposed to be salt, to be light. If you've been in this part of the world, in the Middle East, it's flat. There are some hills and not a whole lot of trees, a lot of shrubs. And they built towns on hills. I stood in Amman, Jordan, and looked over 43 miles away, and I could see Israel. I then later on stood in Israel and looked 43 miles away and could see Amman, Jordan. They built cities on hills. Not only that, they built the towns, they built the cities on hills, but they made them out of white limestone, and you could see them for miles and miles. The sun would often reflect off of them. And at night, when the oil lamps were burning bright, you could see these cities for miles. And Jesus said, just like a city, just like a town, cannot be hidden. You are the light of the world. You're strategically placed right where you are, where you live, where you work, where you travel, the things that you do. You're strategically placed. You're like a strategically placed city. To which you might say, Anthony, I'm not strategically placed. You don't understand. I'm not from here. My job brought me here. Anthony, I'm not from here. I'm here for a little while. I came here to go to school, and I'm going to leave as soon as I get my next job. You might say, Anthony, I don't even want to be here, but I'm stuck in this area right now. I'm not strategically placed. What you and I think is coincidence is God's plan in our life. You're light. You are strategically placed and designed right where you are by God. Look at this next verse. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand. And it gives light to all who are in the house. In the same way that a city is placed on the hill, in the same way that the light is placed on a stand, is the same way that you are strategically placed to be a bright light for Christ. I want you to think about this for a minute. You, the person that you look at in the mirror every morning, the person that you know better than anyone else, God Almighty, creator of everything, has strategically placed you right where you are for His purpose, for His glory. Designed, gifted, equipped you to shine right where you are. And the thing is you and I, we can't shirk this responsibility. It's not like we can turn our light off. We are light just like we are salt. We are going to shine. God designed us that way. You are light and you will shine. It says in verse number 16, let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. You see, leave that verse up for just a second. We don't read that verse this way. No, we read it like this, that they may see your church attendance, Admire your morality, be impressed with your children, agree with all of your social standing, and say, wow, what a good Christian. See, but that's not what Jesus said. See, so many times we think, I'm going to do good. I'm going to do 1-2 good acts a week. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to do all the right things, and great things are going to come to me. And God, in His design, has so much more for you and I than what we are prone to settle for. So much more. We've gotten away from the mindset of what God has intended for us, that it's not about us or our convenience or our will or our reputation or our abilities or inabilities, that it's about our Father in heaven and you and I as salt, you and I as light, bringing honor and glory to Him. So let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Say, Anthony, well, how do I let that light shine? It starts by being poor in spirit. It starts being grieved and mourning over our sin. It goes a little bit deeper than that we would be meek. That's not a quality or a characteristic that is prevalent in our society today. That we would hunger and thirst after righteousness. That we would be merciful, that we would be pure in heart, that we would be peacemakers. And that in living out these attributes as persecution comes our way, that we would be willing to accept that persecution. Jesus said, I want your good deeds to be so extraordinary that when people see your light, when people experience the flavor of your salt, that they don't see you and what you can do and what you are capable of, but that the only thing that they could see is the work of your heavenly Father, and that they would glorify Him. And in that context, Jesus says, let your light shine. Shine bright. Say, Anthony, what's so important about being light? As light, believers expose darkness. They shine light on dishonest practices, on gossip, on corruption, on wickedness, evil, racism. This often angers people, but bright light, as bright light, ought to shine bright on the practices of wickedness. Not because we point out everything, but because the work of God is so clear in us that people see what they do and what they are because of the work of God in us. This is what we're supposed to be. As light, we are supposed to reflect light. Light by nature is more powerful than darkness, and it transforms environments. And that you and I are strategically placed right where we are to transform environments. And say, Anthony, how are we going to transform an environment? Because people aren't going to see you and they're not going to see me, but they're going to see the work of our Heavenly Father, and they're going to glorify Him. And the work that He does in us and through us will not be credited to us, but will be credited to Him. And they would have to be in awe and stand and see God and His work demonstrated through your life, through my life. Jesus said, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you who you are. You are salt. You are light. And if you're a believer, if you're a follower of Jesus, here's what I know about you, even though clearly I don't know everyone's story here. You're a follower of Jesus because someone else was salt in your life. Someone else was light that was strategically placed in your life. And if we take that journey back to when we were lost and without hope, when we were dead in our trespasses and sins, and we put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ and He redeemed us, we were so grateful for that light that shined so bright in our lives. And how quickly we forget the value of that light that shines so bright. You, me, we're light. We're light that's strategically placed, that's designed to shine. Say, Anthony, okay, you make a really good argument. You make a really good point. So how do I leave here today? How do I walk out of these doors? How do I go back to my job where you tell me the Bible says I'm strategically placed? How do I go back to my home and see my neighbors? How do I go to the gym? How do I go to the bank? Wherever else you're going to go, how do you go to those places and shine as bright light? It's a change in our mindset. I'm going to give you 3 things that I think areas where our mindset needs to change. You might want to take notes. You can write these down. The first one is this: light has the potential to change everything. Light has the potential to change everything. You say, Anthony, change what? The world around us. It's so easy for us to acknowledge that the world around us is wicked. But things aren't going to get better by simply acknowledging how bad the world has become. And we do an incredible job in identifying how wicked our society has become while forgetting that our society is without Christ. And without Christ in our hearts, wickedness reigns. That the solution for them is not to change their behavior. The solution for them is that they would see their sin and they would put their faith and their trust in Jesus Christ as their Savior. And light has the potential to change everything. Instead of being surprised by our society, we ought to shine brighter and brighter and brighter. So, but Anthony, I don't understand. It's worse today than it's ever been. And it's interesting. We forget how wicked society was in biblical times. We forget how wicked ancient Rome was. We forget how wicked the Greeks were. Nero himself, there's so many things about his life that we could describe, and a simple Google search would let you know how wicked Nero was. What was Jesus' solution? What's the message he gave? Be a bright light. It's not what we can change. It's the gospel that we share. It's the work of God that changes everything. The solution to the wickedness of our society isn't recognizing how bad it is. It's shining bright and declaring the message of salvation. When the Bible talks about light, we're not talking about fixing the world with our opinions, because we get really good at fixing the world with our opinions. In fact, I get really good at fixing everything with my opinions. But I've learned that my opinions don't mean a whole lot, because the rest of the world has opinions about me. And opinions, I've found that we can be wrong so many times. But we're not talking about opinions. We're talking about mercy and grace for others demonstrated in our lives so that they would see truth. And sadly, when we see a decline in society, it's because the church has stopped functioning in the way that God has commanded it to function. We're supposed to be salt. We're supposed to be light. But instead, what ends up happening is we look at the world around us and we say, it's getting so bad, it's getting so bad. We're supposed to hunker down and just wait to the end. You won't find that in the Word of God anywhere. You will find that we're supposed to shine bright. We're supposed to declare Jesus as Savior and share the life-changing message that changed your life, that changed my life. That we're never supposed to stop doing that. Why? Because light has the potential to change everything. Here's the second thought. Light can be made ineffective. The question isn't, are you light? The question is, are you effective light? Say, Anthony, how do I know if I'm effective light or not? You know, only God knows that, and only God can judge whether I'm effective light. It's a really good argument. And it sounds good, so we continue to say things like that, but here are 2 ways that you can know whether you're effective light or not. The first one's this: Jesus' work in your life is clear for the world to see. This is you living out Matthew 5. This is you walking in the Spirit and the fruit of the Spirit being demonstrated in your life. And you might not always see the results that you think you should see. And you might not always see everyone that you want to come to Christ, but it's not the responsibility to make sure these people make this decision, but to send the message and to be the light and to be savory salt for the world. The second thing, that you're leading people to follow Jesus. I love this because I just got to experience this week. I got to hear about a life group in our church here. It's doing an amazing job of walking through life with people. And it's not the leaders of the life group. Because so many times we think the leaders have to do everything. It's the leaders, it's the people in the life group coming together, discipling one another, spurring each other on to continue to follow after Jesus. They're discipling each other. You say, man, Anthony, I want to be a part of that. You can stop by guest services and you can sign up to be in a life group, because if you're not in a life group, I'm guarantee you something, you're missing out on that experience and having a front row of seeing God work in the lives of people while they're discipling each other and shining bright for the world around them. See, light can be made ineffective if it's hindered. See, God desires to do a work of grace in you, a work where the attributes of His Spirit are on display for the world to see. The problem is, our flesh desires to hinder this work. This work is hindered by hiding our light under a basket. You see it in the passage. We're supposed to shine bright, but our natural desire, our flesh, wants to hide that light. I remember singing the song as a little kid, Light. I'm not going to sing it for you today. You don't want to hear me sing. But the reality is we sang the song as a child, and many times we're prone to living what we shouldn't do, the truth. We live the opposite of that truth as adults. We're supposed to shine bright for the world to see. And we hide it with our negative spirit. We hide it with our carelessness. We hide it with our stubborn self-will, where we prioritize our life and what we think is best and what we want and what we desire. And we want the best for our kids, we want the best education, and want them to get a good job, and want them to have a good retirement, and we want to stock up money for them, and we want to give them bonds and savings accounts, and we want to do all of these things. And carelessly, we forget about our responsibility as strategically placed light. Anthony, you're saying those things are bad? No, they're not bad. They're good things. But when they keep us from being the light that Jesus has called us to be, they're in the way. We're light. We're supposed to shine bright. Light is effective if it's lived in Christ's power. See, you can't be good salt and bring light on your own. Christ has to live this through you. It's His grace. He desires that we would yield to Him, that we would submit to Him, and that He would do this work through us, that we would be effective light. Last point is this. Light is valuable. Light is so valuable. And sadly, we take this for granted, because we walk into a room and we turn on a light switch and we just expect that light is going to come on. In fact, we're surprised when it doesn't. The most we ever really think about it is paying the power bill and maybe some electrical things or a light bulb, and those are all very easy things to do to maintain light. But we didn't live in a society where Jesus was speaking, where light was something that was valuable. You had to purchase the oil to be able to light this small little light in the house, and everything was centered around it. Small piece of metal was placed around the back so it would reflect the light. And it was so valuable for them. Hopefully you guys got that. Light was so valuable for them. So valuable that it was as important for them to have light as it was to eat, as it was to sleep. You and I, as strategically placed light, we're valuable in God's design. And see, the thing is we don't think we're really valuable. And you know why we don't think we're valuable? I'll be honest, we have really good reason. Because you know you better than anyone else, and I know me better than anyone else. And I can give you lots of reasons why I don't consider myself valuable light. But you know what's amazing about this? Is what's supposed to shine in all of the places where I'm strategically placed isn't Anthony Fusco. There's nothing here in me to shine. But what's supposed to shine is Christ's work in me. If you're looking in the mirror and you go, there's nothing valuable here to shine, you're right. You're biblically accurate. But what's supposed to shine isn't you. Isn't what you are. What's supposed to shine is Christ's work in you. His work. His power. His mercy. His grace. It's supposed to flow through you and that others would experience you. And you say, well, Anthony, listen, you know what? You're preaching to the wrong person because I have a really, really, really bad reputation where I work. Anthony, I've not done a good job of living that good Christian life. Anthony, people know this other side of me that you don't know, that pastor doesn't know, that no one in the church really knows. That's okay. So many times we don't give enough credit for the transforming work that Christ does in a heart and in a life. The most amazing light that you could be is to walk in and say, Jesus changed me. There's something different about me. Yes, I trusted Jesus a long time ago, but there were some things in my life that weren't there. And what you're experiencing now in the forgiveness and the grace and the mercy and the kindness and the gentleness that you're experiencing isn't me. It's Jesus. That they would see your good works, that they would glorify your Father in heaven. This is what we're supposed to be. The work of God in your life is valuable for people to see. Your gifts, the abilities that God has given you, have been strategically placed right where you are and are valuable. Here's the question. Will you shine? I want you to think about this for a second. Will you shine? Because this is the deliberate decision. I'm either going to submit to the work of God in my life, and He is going to do this work through me, and light is going to shine bright, and it's not my light, it's His light through me, or I'm making a deliberate decision to say, no, I'm going to hide it under a basket. I'm not going to shine. If that's you right now, I urge you, the greatest thing in life you can do in any decision is to admit to what Jesus desires for you. And if you're sitting right here and you're going, Anthony, I want to shine, I just don't know how. If you got your phone, if you got a piece of paper, if you got your bulletin handout, I want you to think about 3 names. Maybe you were here last week and you didn't write down some names. Maybe you were here and you wrote down some names. I want you to think about those names right now. If you don't have some names written down someplace, I want you to write 1, 2, or 3 names down that you're going to focus in on, that you're going to think about, that you're going to pray about, that they would come to Jesus, that they would see light in your life. Here's the prayer. God, would you use me to influence this person or these persons, that I could have the opportunity to see them come to you, to see them put their faith and their trust in you, be redeemed of their sins. That's the prayer. Would you write those names down if you weren't here last week? Would you write them down if you were here? Maybe you didn't. Would you write 1, 2, or 3 names down, and would you pray over them for the next 87 days, I believe? Would you pray over them? There's invitations in the bulletin that you've got right now as well. Those have been placed there by our staff. Would you hand those out this week? We're coming up to the Sunday where people who don't go to church think about going to church. Would you take one of those invitations and say, hey, I'll save you a seat. Look around you. There's plenty of seats. Remember, we didn't do 2 services just for the convenience so you can come a little bit earlier, get out a little bit earlier. This was a design to make more room so that people can be here, hear the word of God, and that we could watch God radically change their lives for His honor, for His glory. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father, we love you. God, I'm so thankful for your word. God, I'm so thankful for who you are. That you would use us, that you would desire to use us to be salt, to be light. God, that you would strategically place us to your plan, to your will. Father, would you help us? Lord, to walk out of these doors, to live what you have for us. That we would be flavorful salt, that we would be bright light. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.